Hey guys, my name is Dice Rollin'. Today we're going to be taking a look at the movie that started it all, and put the name Freddy Krueger into moviegoers' nightmares. A Nightmare on Elm Street was written and directed by Wes Craven, and was released on November 16th, 1984. A mysterious force is killing teens who live on Elm Street in their sleep. Whoever, or whatever it is, has to be stopped before every teen ends up dead. So without further ado, this is my review of A Nightmare on Elm Street. We get the briefest of introductions to what kind of antagonist we're dealing with here. Clearly it's someone who's crafty and has a Home Depot membership. Then we're introduced to Tina, played by Amanda Weiss, who seems to be running from someone unseen. Possibly Little Bo Peep. Her attempt to evade her pursuer leads to a boiler room in hell. On a bit of a side note, what is this? What is that? If I were being chased by someone who wants to be a human shredder, I would be putting a hell of a lot more effort into hauling my ass out of there. But it's okay because this was just a nightmare. Tina tells her friends about this the next day at school. Here we have Nancy, played by Heather Langenkamp, Glenn, played by a pre-Tim Burton Johnny Depp, and Rod, played by Jesus Garcia.
I had a hard-on this morning when I woke up, Tina. Had your name written all over it.
There's 4 letters in my name, Rod. How could there be room on your joint for 4 letters?
While having a bit of a sleepover, Tina and Nancy discuss the nightmare that they both seem to have had, involving the same strange individual with the clawed hand. This conversation is abruptly ended by Rod scaring the shit out of the girls and Glenn. Turns out Rod is there for Tina. Unfortunately for Glenn and Nancy, who have to try to sleep in a house where the walls are not nearly thick enough. Eventually, all 4 of them do fall asleep, and that's where the real nightmare begins. Tina comes face to face with the man from her nightmare once again, and despite her best efforts, this time he wins. This provides us with one of the most truly horrifying death scenes in horror. This results in practically everybody believing that Tina was murdered by Rod. Technically, it's a logical conclusion to come to, given. Conveniently enough, Nancy's father is a lieutenant, and he's played by the late John Saxon. He's not exactly thrilled that his daughter is involved in this.
What was she doing there?
But Nancy tries to explain to both her parents why she was there, and why the concept of Rod murdering Tina just doesn't make sense. The next day, as Nancy attempts to go to school, Rod jump scares her once again. He pleads his case that he didn't kill Tina, before Lieutenant Thompson appears. Rod makes a run for it, but he's swiftly arrested. Now it's time to attend class that just so happens to be taught by Lynn Shay. Nancy's not going to be retaining much here though, as she drifts into sleep, having gotten none the previous night. This provides us with a visual that's not just in Nancy's nightmare, but has also caused some after viewing this movie. Following after her deceased friend, Nancy reaches the boiler room, where she meets Freddy Krueger, played by Robert Englund, who traps her in a dead end. Nancy, thinking quickly, burns her arm in order to wake herself up before Freddy can kill her. Leaving school, Nancy visits Rod, who tells her what happened the night Tina was killed. He also tells her about the nightmare he had had involving a man with a razored glove. That night, Nancy makes the mistake of falling asleep while taking a bath, which leaves the perfect chance for Freddy to attack. Thankfully, Nancy manages to get out of the tub alive. However, she decides that this calls for some pills to help her stay awake. Here's something else to keep Nancy from falling asleep: a mild heart attack from Glenn, who is lurking outside her window. But it's okay because Glenn's a decent boyfriend and just wants to check on her.
Did you have any weird dreams last night?
Slept like a rock.
Yeah, well, fuck you, Glenn. Nancy comes up with a plan and tells Glenn that she wants him to watch her while she allows herself to go to sleep. I do have to wonder how many teens were severely jealous that they too didn't have Johnny Depp directly in their dreams. Unconscious Nancy leaves her house and goes to the jail. There, she sees Freddy go to Rod, and Tina appears again. Thanks to Glenn's absence, Nancy must fend for herself as Freddy turns his attention to her once again. She's able to fend him off long enough to be woken up by her alarm clock. The danger isn't gone though, as Nancy and Glenn go to the police station, realizing that Freddy will be after Rod next. And they're right. With so much trauma, Mrs. Thompson takes Nancy to a clinic where they plan to monitor her while she sleeps.
What the hell are dreams anyway?
Mysteries,
incredible body hocus pocus.
And where did you say you got your PhD? Of course, Nancy has a nightmare again, but this time when she wakes up, she has evidence of Krueger. While her mother is in denial and wants to forget about this, Nancy insists that it's real. After some pushing though, Mrs. Thompson admits that Fred Krueger was real, but he's dead. Nancy returns home to find that her mother has put bars on all the windows. She also has something to show her. Going to the basement, she tells Nancy that Krueger was a child murderer who managed to get out after being caught. Seeking their own kind of revenge, she and a bunch of other parents managed to corner him in his boiler room, and burned it as well as him. She even has his glove to prove it. Nice souvenir. Look good on the wall in the kitchen, you know? This does nothing to ease Nancy's fear of the man though, so she comes up with another plan. She will confront Krueger in her dreams and grab him before Glenn wakes her up. This way, he will be brought into the conscious world, though I'm not sure Glenn's record really provides much reassurance here. And just as it was to be expected, Glenn fell asleep. When Nancy attempts to call him, his parents refuse to let her speak with him and unhook the phone. And even though Nancy yanks her own phone out of the wall, that doesn't mean Freddy can't give her a call. Oddly enough, there were a number of people who would willingly call Freddy in the 80s.
Dial this number now for Freddy's favorites!
Unfortunately for Nancy, her mother has elected to lock the doors, which means that Glenn ain't gonna have a good time. Nancy tells Lieutenant Thompson that she knows who did this, and she's going to go get him and bring him into the real world. She then proceeds to booby-trap the entire house. Nancy Thompson walked so that Kevin McAllister could run. And so, Nancy once again falls asleep, returning to Krueger's boiler room. She manages to confront and grab him before waking up. Good news is, it worked. Freddy's in the real world now. Bad news is, Nancy's dad isn't there like he said he would be. On the plus side, all her traps seem to be doing pretty good.
Help! Where are you? Everything is gonna be alright!
See this? This is why police in horror movies have such a bad rep. Finally, Lieutenant Thompson comes to Nancy's aid and breaks in. But Krueger is no longer where Nancy had left him. Instead, he's gone upstairs after her mother and was successful. And that's another one for the nightmares. However, Nancy realizes that it's not quite over yet. This time though, she knows how to defeat him once and for all. Just turn your back on him and take back what you gave him. So Nancy survives and her mother and friends are alive. Or are they? With one of the most well-known cliffhangers ever, the credits roll, leaving viewers questioning whether or not they should sleep tonight. A Nightmare on Elm Street has a very original plot. Many instances of the use of nightmare in dreams could be traced back to this movie. Having it being based on real events and experiences adds an edge to it too. Don't get me wrong, there are some plot holes and things I just can't quite reason out. But Wes Craven used a ton of creativity in, if you will, dreaming up the concept for the story. It allows nearly every viewer to connect to the fears of the main characters, because we all sleep, and dreams and nightmares are prevalent. While not everyone is afraid of killer dolls or ghosts, or some other form of monster, many of us have had that one instance where we've had to wake up out of a terrifying nightmare. I wasn't quite sure just how scary I found Freddy to be during the first time I watched this, but the more I watch it, the more I understand where others are coming from. The concept of having an unseen entity coming after you when you're most vulnerable is creepy as hell. Add into that people you trust not believing you when you say that your life is in danger, and this figure essentially being unkillable, and that's definitely a recipe for some nightmares. Heather Langenkamp created a different sort of template for Final Girls. She gave Nancy a vulnerability yet resilience, and bravery that was separate from other lead female characters that came before her. She was highly empathetic and made it very easy for us to root for her. The strongest performance, aside from Heather Langenkamp, came from Robert Englund. If you're going to have a main character that you truly want to see go up against the villain and survive, then you need a truly evil antagonist. Clearly, Englund put everything he had into the character of Freddy Krueger. If you've seen some of the interviews with him and behind-the-scenes stuff, then you know he did a lot of research and brainstorming to figure out just how Krueger should be, and it paid off big time. John Saxon and Ronnie Blakely were wonderful as the dedicated father and struggling mother, both trying to be good parents but having their own failings to deal with. All of the actors portraying the side characters were also quite good. Given that this was Johnny Depp's debut, I'm rather impressed. Amanda Weiss was able to shock people instead of having them laugh during Tina's death. And even though Rod initially came off as a nuisance and an asshole, Jesus Garcia brought empathy to him as well. You feel sorry for him. Though a majority of the main actors were young individuals with little or no experience in movie making, they all did well enough. They aren't necessarily brilliant or horrible performances, but nothing felt weak or wooden. Practical effects throughout, and it all holds up rather well. It's almost like magic tricks that were filmed. That's real fire as well. So shout out to the stuntman who pulled off Freddy being on fire for so long. Granted, you know it's someone wearing special clothes and a mask throughout the whole scene. I quite like the effect of Freddy pushing through the wall above Nancy. The atmosphere and settings are solid, with the scariest being Freddy's boiler room, of course. It comes off as being very hellish and maze-like, which aids to the feeling of being trapped along with those who are stuck in there with Freddy. The settings in reality are also interesting in their own way. There are little Easter eggs and such throughout if you look closely. The music and scoring is iconic and instantly recognizable. Charles Bernstein created something that was both a sort of embodiment of the 80s, and managed to send a chill up audiences' spines. The main theme is quite creepy and sets the mood very well. Every other piece works with the scenes seamlessly, also letting the viewer know when they had entered the nightmare world. With all that being said, I'm giving A Nightmare on Elm Street 8.5 out of 10 bloody thumbs up. The cultural impact this movie had is still prevalent 36 years later. It's parodied and referenced in a number of TV series and movies. Even if you've never seen A Nightmare on Elm Street before, chances are you still know quite a bit about it just from other media. And it's still scary. There are grown adults who saw this movie when they were young and are still afraid of Freddy Krueger. Wes Craven was quite smart in the creation of this story, and its characters, because even though it's a staple of the 80s, a lot of its elements are timeless. Like I said, sleep is a universal thing. Having dreams and nightmares is a shared experience. And the image of a boogeyman like Krueger is something that scares all of us. I would recommend A Nightmare on Elm Street to slasher fans, those who haven't yet delved into this classic franchise, fans of strong final girls, and anyone who's looking for a horror film that can lull them into pleasant nightmares. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like to let me know. Don't forget to leave a comment down below telling me what you think of this film. And if you have any suggestions for horror movies you would like to see me cover in the future. You can support the channel through my Patreon, where you can get exclusive content and early access to videos like this. And don't forget to share this video to help the channel grow, and subscribe for more videos like this. See you later.
1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, then lock your door. 5, 6, grab a crucifix. 7, 8, gonna stay up late. 9, 10, never sleep again.